Debby Coles-Dobay. She manages the City of Boynton Beach Art and Public Places program. The program's mission is to integrate the public art into the greater community. The purpose is to stimulate cultural interaction, education, tourism, and economic development by selecting, citing, installing, and maintaining public art. The vision is to connect the cultural environment in Boynton Beach with the global community. The program is funded through a 1% public art fee. As development occurs, public art is integrated into the architecture, infrastructure, landscape, and greenways throughout the city. To date, under Debbie's management, the city has 81 public artworks installed, a successful Avenue of the Arts, year-long rotating outdoor exhibit, and plans for the 4th biannual International Kinetic Art Exhibit and Symposium. Debbie is the executive director of the event and as the public art manager for the past 11 years, serves as liaison to the Arts Commission, city CRA staff, developers, and the community. Debbie is the first public art manager of the city and was hired with over 11 years of experience in corporate marketing management. She holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the Florida Atlantic Institute. Join me in welcoming Debbie to the stage. Can't wait to hear her presentation. Let me get you going here. Okay, you are this one?
Yep.
There you go.
So thank you, everybody, and I want to thank you for this invitation to come to Whirlwind. I'm having a very nice time, exciting time. One of the best part of coming here is that I get to hang out with my artist friends. Wave your hands, artist friends. Yay! And meet new ones that I haven't met before. And also, you know, these speakers today were really engaging and wonderful, don't you think? Yeah, absolutely. One of the highlights, I think, of this presentation is that, you know, our conversations that are happening throughout and are going to continue really, you know, talk about how kinetics are going to influence into the future. So let me get this thing going. Kinetics, let's see, I didn't move. Oh, I'll just do this. There we go. Kinetics are very exciting, they're energizing, they're engaging, and they're entertaining. And in this fast-paced world where everything we need to know is right about now, right? Kinetics really rise to the popularity of what's happening today in a very unique art form. So exhibits and symposiums are increasing, and I'm so happy that you guys are having one here. And popularity, but you know, why is that? Why is Kinetic becoming so popular? Well, I'd like to start with a story of what's happening in the city of Boynton Beach. What the Art and Public Places decided to do, the program, is to elect that public art and kinetics is one of its top 3 art forms in the city, kinetic, glass, and eco art. And the reason for that is because as a public art manager, one of the challenges of what I do is to educate the public about the value of art. And when we have our Avenue of the Arts year-long rotating outdoor exhibition for many years now, we've started in 2008, one of the first kinetic art pieces on exhibit was Tom Brewitz's Gyra. And we soon discovered that people look at kinetics and they really are inspired, maybe not what is that art form, I'm not educated in the arts, but it breaks down that barrier. And really what they want to know is how does it work, how does it move? You know, they get into the function of how the art actually happens. So experimenting with the motivation to learn, and therefore, you know, what they will do then is they'll appreciate the art more, right? So at the time, the Arts Commission, again, was looking for an opportunity to connect public and the brand of the city with a unique art form. And at the same time, I met Rafonso, which you see his artwork here at the Arboretum, and we met. He was also an international kinetic artist at the time, still is, and also the co-founder, along with Ray Treefelt, of the Kinetic Art Organization. So we spoke to him, and he was kind of frustrated because he wanted to have a kinetic art exhibit in some other cities in South Florida, and we immediately said, we'll have it in Boynton. Absolutely. So that's basically how it started. And so on February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 2019, the city will be celebrating its 4th International Kinetic Art Exhibit and Symposium, and I want to invite you all to attend. So I'm going to share with you a brief video. You will see many different art forms that were exhibited at the 2015 exhibit. It's a biennial, so it was 13, 15, and 17, now it's an 18 coming up. So I just want to show you this shorter video that's in 2015, and you'll notice some of the artists and their artworks that are here, but it'll also give you a really good broad spectrum of a lot of the artworks that exist in kinetic art forms. Art is that creative link to get people to think, to get them to open up their minds, and that's very important. As all those disciplines, science, technology, engineering, and math, those require that creative thinking. And if you don't have that creative thinking, how do you create things like kinetic art that then inspire new technologies?
Kinetic art explores the 4th dimension, which is time and change over time. And also it explores the interactivity of a sculpture with its environment.
So I think you saw lots of different art forms, right? And some of the artists work here today. So let's move on to kinetics and global impacts and new trends. Kinetics definition, we heard quite a bit of definitions in the past from the other speakers, which were wonderful. But it's basically a loose term referring to sculpture that includes motion as a dimension, that just possess some sort of energy and actively and lively and dynamic, and it's energizing. So a lot of the resources for that interaction work with the environment by wind, water, electric, solar, and even the viewer interaction. But if we expand this a little bit, looking into what's happening into the future now and into the future, there's a lot of interactions. Kinetics are evolving interactions with the environment and people, or even both. And it communicates a sensorial experience. So, I mean, you really engage people very specifically in how they can interact with the art itself. And many of the artists, as you'll see in some of this presentation that we have here, they are out to break the barriers of traditional art forms. And it does include all disciplines, as we learned in Bill's presentation. We need engineering, art. It's actually the STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. What are their inspirations? I've done lots of interviews with the artists over the years, and it seems like these rise to the top. They get their inspiration from nature. You heard in the last video that it's the 3rd dimension plus the 4th dimension, and connecting time and then change over time. Materials often dictate the process, as you just saw in some of the other presentations. And it usually envisions a genuinely interactive space whose form and physical configuration can respond and learn from its users. And again, the famous statement of art and engineering exists only in our minds from Theo Jensen rings true quite often. I'm going to show you a couple pieces and just give you some ideas of what these artworks do contribute to moving into the future of kinetics. In 2017, an artist called Stefan Radu Cretu from Romania decided to participate and exhibit his artwork for the first time in the United States. And as artists often do, they research their projects. They research where their site-specific artworks will be installed. And that's what he did. He wanted to utilize solar power as an interactive artwork. So what he created is this creature called moonfish. And what moonfish is basically is a creature that comes from the ocean, which is located very close in Boynton Beach, comes up out of the water, flops on the beach because literally there was sand texture on this piece, and has fins that move, and it also lights up. So there's a solar panel that activates all of this. It's a sensory piece, so when you come up to it, all of this starts to move. And then, of course, we know rain tree fell solar butterfly. And this was a wonderful piece that was exhibited. Again, trying to look at the artwork in an urban setting. We created a little bit of a spatial area that's landscaped nicely, powered by solar. Again, interacted to when people came up to it, then it started flapping its wings, and I guess you guys see that happening here in the Arboretum, which is a wonderful setting for the art. Kinetic rain, I'm not sure, you might have seen this over YouTube, the internet, but this is a wonderful piece that has many elements to it, and it's in Shanghai Airport in Singapore. So what you see is, I'll just run it for you, it's a wonderful video. These are like 1,000 rising and falling metal raindrops, and it's a complex computer programming that creates this ballet of raindrops moving in synchronicity. So this is a technologically motivated and moving piece that you see. It's almost like a ballet, isn't it? I don't think the music plays in the airport, though. It'd be kind of cool. Okay, we'll move on. It is beautiful. We all know Rafonso, and he wishes he would have been here. He was very disappointed he couldn't come and meet you all and, you know, hang out with his buddies, his artists, kinetic artist buddies. And anyway, but Union by Rafonso is a very iconic kinetic piece, very interacting, and it represents wings that represent when people meet. So it's that interaction, that union of people and place and space. And it creates a gathering place. As a public artist, we always look to how do you attract, you know, people into an area and create that space that's much more exciting. Sure.
Was that display at the airport? Or?
That was in Shanghai, correct. So his interactive piece also has LED lights. So I'm going to play a clip that was on CNN, and he has a lot of conversation in this as well that will help with discussing about his thing.
Presented by Omega.
A little commercial break, sorry. Yeah, right, exactly.
I really am inspired originally by nature. As things move in nature, whether it's a tree or tall grass, I'm fascinated by the best of all these designers, Mother Nature, and that gives me great inspirations.
Swiss artist and designer Ralfonso channels that natural inspiration to give his creations the power to move. His large kinetic wind sculptures can be found in countries all over the world, from Europe to the Middle East to Asia. One of his latest works, this installation in Orlando, Florida.
This sculpture here in Orlando is called Union. It's a group of 6 vertical elements which have altogether 36 moving, intersecting wings. They move counterclockwise and clockwise as they are wind-driven at about 25 feet in the air. The inspiration came from the brief interactions, the randomness of interaction when people meet.
The unpredictability of the wind adds a desired element to Ralfonso's sculptures.
I just think nowadays it is so much more interesting to have art that changes over time. You know, you're kind of exploring the 4th dimension, the 3 dimensions of a sculpture, a traditional sculpture, plus the 4th dimension, which is time and change over time.
When day turns to night, the wind sculpture creates a new experience for the viewer by adding the element of light. 3,000 LED bulbs are programmed to create beautiful lighting patterns and hues that are reflected off the spinning stainless steel wings. The movements may be random, but there is nothing random about the design.
In a traditional sculpture, you deal with the design and then the fabrication as a bronze or whatever material you use. In a kinetic sculpture, you have the design element the same way, except it goes beyond pure design of a 3-dimensional shape. It goes into mechanics, a bit into engineering. Often the shape is just critical to the design, meaning you might have a beautiful design, but if it's not the right shape or the right balance within the sculpture, then it will never move as you thought it should or would.
Ralfonso plans to install more of his wind sculptures around the world and wants to make them much larger, as long as nature continues to provide wind to make his art move.
So, I mean, you can see that it involves a lot more dynamics with the LED lights in it, but a funny story about this piece in Orlando, it was privately commissioned. I guess the mayor was given an interactive video, and he was an interactive app for, you know, being able to change the lights and everything. It does it automatically, but the mayor didn't let anybody else use it. Kept it for himself, and now he has passed away. So it's like, you know, obviously you need to share those things, not just keep them for yourself. One of the things I wanted to share with you today, too, is we're looking to a commission by Ralfonso for the city of Boynton Beach for their town square plan, so it's pretty exciting to do something of a magnitude of a piece like that. Here's another project called Murmuration. I'm sure you've probably maybe seen some of this type of work by Poetic Kinetics. Pat Stern is going to be on this video discussing how the work was made and the purpose of it. And these are very larger than life sculptures, which really bring a new dimension and reason for public spaces to include public art.
ephemeration is the starlings that fly in big clouds, or the fish that swim in schools where the entire body of animals will shift in one direction. That whole sort of visual thing was what inspired me to kind of go into this direction. What's really fun is that they're all site-specific and they're all different. So we're not like recycling the same idea. They're growing and evolving and playing with the actual location to sort of maximize the motion and to give people an intimate experience at the same time is really kind of what it's about. That's where the artistry lives.
So another artist, Banaz Farahi, she's from Israel, and she was part of our 2015 International Kinetic exhibit. She did a presentation. A lot of her work is very connected to kinetics that respond to the human body and humans and mapping their movements. She did a presentation that spoke about, and I'll show you a video in a moment here, but she spoke about the way to have whole entire structures or architecture that will then be able to move on its own in response to people's movements. So it's, again, another whole future of how kinetics really connect to people and our environments. But I'd like to kind of just read a brief thing about what she is doing in her conceptual ideas, and you'll see an example of real time that she's actually created a couple pieces that work. How might we imagine a space that can develop an understanding of its users through the sounds of bodily movements and respond accordingly? How might we envision a genuinely interactive space where form and physical configuration can respond to and learn from its users? And how might such a space influence how we inhabit our environment and change the way we live? Recent advances in technology allow spaces to adapt to their users and reconfigure their physical form so as to create a new empathetic relationship between the animated bodies of the users and the otherwise inanimate material of the environment. So here's an example of what she's talking about. So I think that gives you the idea, right? How many of you know about Theo Jensen? Okay, I'm sure quite a few do. Thank you. One of the things that I wanted to share with you is for the first International Kinetic Art Exhibit Symposium, I interviewed Theo, and he did a presentation for that symposium. It was really, really cool to speak to him, as I love speaking to all the artists, because I really discover so many different things and learn about what's in their head and where they came from and what motivates them to create kinetic artwork. But what was most interesting about Theo is you've seen his movable works that move by the wind on the beaches in Denmark. Basically, he calls them his strand beast, and that is the correct spelling. And basically, he views them as his creatures. He said to create a new animal, and he's teaching them how to survive on the beach. He wrote a newspaper, like his background was, he wasn't really into art, but his background was he wrote a newspaper column and he came up with these strange ideas. And then he passed like a tool shop and was a little bit motivated by this inexpensive electrical tubes, which you'll see in the video in a moment. And so again, the material motivated him to say, what can I do with these things? You know, how can I make something? And he began playing with them. And he said 22 years later, he was really addicted to the process. He wrote, he had some background in physics, and he wrote a genetic algorithm, is how he calls it, on the computer to solve the walking system that you'll see. And he published this as an open source code, so people and students can, again, use this genetic code, as he calls it, to create new projects. So what he states there is that these animals are using humanity to multiply. And then, like I said, he studied 7 years in physics. He didn't get his diploma, and he was basically a painter, but then he rediscovered technology. And he thinks that, you know, all artists have technologically, you know, and background in them. He thinks engineers are also, you know, creative, part of the creative process. The other thing he chats about is his muscle nerve cells are there to trigger a system of pistons and valves to drive the mechanisms to move. And then the strand beasts, as they go on exhibition around the world, they usually consist of the fossils, which are the pieces that no longer operate. And he has them, pushes them into what he calls a boneyard on Jensen Beach, which actually is located on Google, so you can Google Theo Jensen Beach, which is kind of cool. But the basic premise, and he really didn't, he was labeled a kinetic artist many years ago, and he accepted that, but that wasn't really what he thought of himself as to be. But his basic premise is he likes to see people smile and the look on their face when they see his strand beasts. And I think this is a really good segue into our panel discussion, because, again, when you talk to artists and find out where their motivation is, what's inspired them, what moves them to create their kinetics, it's always very enlightening and very amazing to me. So I'll end on this video.
My sculptures are made of very light materials, and they are powered by the wind. A part of me is an engineer who wants to map the progress of mobility. And always I strive to push the boundaries of what we know and what seems possible to us at this moment in time. The walls between art and engineering exist only in our minds.